the first time that I felt betrayed. It was the first time that I'd ever been just directly told, this is the star of this show, you're not, step back.
Martha Reeves and the Vandellas really hated the Supremes, and it was Berry Gordy's fault. So, while the Supremes were out there stealing the show in Motown, Martha and the Vandellas were out putting in the work, helping to define that Motown sound. But they never really got the spotlight they deserved.
We were kind of like the rough and ready, go and get 'em type performers, and the Supremes were pampered and put through a more of an easier way. I'll put it that way.
So, what happened? Why were Martha and the Vandellas left in the shadows while Diana and her crew took center stage? Is that why they hated the Supremes so much? There's a whole lot to unpack here. Let's dig into it.
So Van Dyke is the street that I live near. Anyone from Detroit knows where Van Dyke Street is. And then Della Reese had impressed me greatly. I said, Della Reese, maybe we can blend from some of her names, so we came up with Vandellas.
Martha Reeves and the Vandellas had all the stuff that usually makes a group blow up big. Killer songs, a front woman who knew how to command a stage, and a sound that hit hard. But somehow, they still ended up flying under the radar when people talk about the big names from that era. Everyone's always bringing up the Supremes like they were the blueprint, but the Vandellas weren't even playing the same game. Diana Ross had that polished glam thing going on. Meanwhile, Martha came in like she had somewhere to be, and no time to sugarcoat it. Her voice didn't float. It hit you. She sounded like she'd been through every lyric she sang. No pretending, no soft edges. There was heat in it, like someone who wasn't just performing. She was telling you how it really felt. They kicked things off in Detroit, just helping out in the background, jumping in when other groups needed a hand. But the second Martha grabbed the mic for real, everything changed. That's when the whole thing started making sense. Their moment hit when they dropped that song, Heat Wave. It wasn't just catchy, it felt like a party had crashed into church and spilled into a soul concert. Loud, bright, and impossible to ignore. It wasn't trying to fit into one lane, it was doing the most, in the best way. And the craziest part? It actually got them a Grammy nod, which wasn't exactly being handed out to black girl groups back then. Then came that one track that had people dancing in their kitchens and marching in the streets. It sounded like pure celebration, but it hit way deeper, like it knew exactly what kind of chaos people were pushing through. It somehow became the background music for joy, anger, resistance, everything all at once. After that, they dropped a song that felt like being stuck in a maze with no way out. You could literally hear the tension. They even dragged real chains across the floor in the studio just to nail that trapped feeling. Motown was really doing the most behind the scenes, and it worked. And they didn't just stop there. They kept cranking out songs that sounded fun, but had layers if you listened close. Stuff like Jimmy Mac, and Come and Get These Memories, came wrapped in catchy hooks. But there was always something a little raw sitting underneath. What really set them apart was Martha, no question. She wasn't out here trying to be flawless or picture perfect. Motown had a whole lineup of artists who helped build the sound, but didn't get the all eyes on them treatment later on. There were names like Brenda Holloway,
What are you gonna do when I'm gone? Whose shoulder are you gonna?
the Marvelettes, Kim Weston, people who had real hits, real voices, real impact, but got pushed to the background when the label decided to go all in on a few select faces. That's the thing. Motown wasn't just a factory pumping out chart toppers. It was packed with talent. And while some artists got the full spotlight moment, others were just as good and somehow got lost in the mix. Martha and the Vandellas were one of those groups that still hit just as hard today. You blast their stuff loud, and it still gives you goosebumps. There was something raw in it, unfiltered and loud in all the right ways. If you really dig into what they made, it wasn't just catchy, it was honest, bold, and way ahead of its time. But even with all the wins, the label didn't hype her the same way they did with others. When Diana Ross went solo, the whole machine kicked into overdrive to make her the star. Martha, on the other hand, little by little, the spotlight shifted, and the industry started looking the other way. You can't talk about Martha and the Vandellas without bringing up the Supremes. They were always on the same path, but ended up with totally different outcomes. Both groups were stacked with talent and dropped hit after hit, but only one got the Queen treatment, while the other kinda got left to do their own thing. See, as Motown blew up into a commercial giant, the label started leaning into a more polished image for its stars, and the Supremes fit that clean-cut, glamorous mold just right.
We were kind of like the rough and ready, go and get 'em type performers, and the Supremes were pampered and put through a more of an easier way. I'll put it that way.
The Supremes were all about that polished, glamorous look, perfect for TV appearances, like the Ed Sullivan Show, where they could play it smooth and keep everything in check. Diana Ross especially had that lighter, pop-friendly voice that made her stand out. Berry Gordy spotted her early, not just as a singer, but as someone who could be a whole brand. And let's just say, he wasn't just interested in her professionally. There was a personal side to their connection too. They were involved, and they had a daughter together. Once he had his eye on Diana, the Supremes became his full-on pet project. Behind the scenes at Motown, things started getting messy. There were other girl groups, like the Marvelettes and Mary Wells, who were killing it and had a loyal following. But suddenly, they were being pushed to the back. Mary Wells had scored Motown's first #1 hit with My Guy.
Nothing you can say to tear me away from my...
And the Marvelettes were the first Motown group to hit #1 with Please Mr. Postman. But none of them got the same resources, the PR blitz, or the same level of attention that the Supremes got once Diana was the Golden Girl. When Diana Ross and the Supremes hit the scene, it was crystal clear. This was Diana's show now. It wasn't about the group anymore. It was all about making her a superstar. Berry wasn't just thinking music. He wanted Diana in everything. Movies, TV, fashion, you name it. He was all in. Meanwhile, Martha had the same stage presence and voice that could own a room, but that kind of push wasn't coming her way. While the Supremes kept climbing the charts, the Vandellas slowly slipped off the airwaves. Not because the music wasn't fire, but because they weren't getting the same spotlight. It's crazy when you listen to both groups back to back. You can totally hear the difference. When it came down to it, Motown was all about what could sell, and they put all their chips on Diana Ross. She was the one they thought could break into mainstream America. When people say Martha and the Vandellas were underrated, it's not just a throwback thing. It's real. They got caught up in Motown's internal mess, where image and relationships mattered way more than raw talent. It wasn't just that Motown picked the Supremes over them. They picked the Supremes over everyone. Diana Ross didn't just ride that wave. She was the wave. That's why Martha's legacy, and the legacy of so many other Motown women, feels kinda incomplete. They helped build Motown into what it was, but they never got to sit at the table. Let's talk about Martha and Diana's relationship. They both went solo at some point. How'd that go?
I didn't take it to her because I was happy for her. I imagined for Avis there had to be a Hertz, and I kind of feel that that's how we are, as far as the Motown sound is concerned.
From the jump, Martha and Diana were basically night and day. Martha was this fiery, bold woman who poured everything into her music, while Diana had that smooth, polished look that made her seem like she was straight out of Motown's grooming handbook. It wasn't just about their musical styles. There was real tension between them. What started as a rivalry quickly turned personal, with jealousy and competition boiling over. Martha started to notice she wasn't getting the same shine as Diana, even though she was leading the Vandellas and had hits. As Diana became Motown's golden child, it got harder for Martha to ignore that she wasn't getting the same level of attention. Apparently, their performances weren't always smooth sailing either, with the two clashing over how they should show up on stage.
Closely chaperoned under orders from Berry Gordy, the Motown artists left together by bus on that groundbreaking tour. Martha and the Vandellas, Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Mary Wells, the Temptations, the Marvelettes, and Stevie Wonder, all performing on the same bill.
But the frustration wasn't just about being in the spotlight. Martha felt like the Vandellas were being pushed aside for the Supremes. She didn't hide the fact that she thought Diana used her relationship with Berry Gordy to climb to the top, leaving the rest of the women in the shadows. Martha wasn't shy about speaking up in interviews, calling out the favoritism she saw playing out at Motown. The drama kept escalating. Martha firmly believed Gordy was backing Diana so hard, making her out to be the chosen one, while the Vandellas, the Marvelettes, and Mary Wells were sidelined. There were even rumors that Diana's rise was helped along by undercutting the other groups, which Martha didn't hesitate to address in later years. As time passed, it was clear they were on different tracks. Diana was becoming an icon, with Motown pulling out all the stops for her, while Martha was left feeling like her massive contributions to the label's sound were ignored. After bouncing from Motown, Martha made some moves, signing with MCA and dropping the Willie Dynamite soundtrack in 1974. She followed it up with a self-titled album produced by Richard Perry, featuring big names like Billy Preston and James Taylor. But despite the star power, the album flopped hard, even getting some harsh criticism for not clicking with her style. She didn't let that stop her, though. In 1975, she showed up on Saturday Night Live as a musical guest, took acting classes at the Lee Strasberg Institute, and popped up on a bunch of TV shows and game shows. By 1977, she was all about that born-again Christian life and dropped more music, but nothing really stuck. She made a memorable return in 1983 on the Motown 25 special and rejoined the Vandellas for tours and fresh music. In 1995, they got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Martha kept the solo career going strong. She dropped her first album in over 2 decades, Home to You, in 2004, with tracks she wrote and produced herself.
Got to get home to you.
Martha's music found its way into movies like Thelma and Louise and Good Morning, Vietnam, and she kept making TV appearances, including The Midnight Special and Soul Train. She kept building her legacy, even getting an honorary PhD in 2012 and getting into the Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame in 2015. She didn't slow down either. Martha kept hitting big stages, selling out venues like Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club in London and touring Belgium. In 2015, she also snagged the Sandy Hosey Lifetime Achievement Award. Diana, on the other hand. Diana's solo career is legendary. After leaving the Supremes, she didn't just fade into the background, she stepped into the spotlight and owned it. Her debut album kicked things off, but it was Ain't No Mountain High Enough that made sure everyone knew she was the real deal, topping the charts in both R&B and pop. She kept the hits rolling throughout the 70s, with songs like Touch Me in the Morning, and Upside Down from Diana, not to mention the iconic I'm Coming Out. But But Diana didn't stop at just music. She crossed over into acting, scoring an Oscar nom for Lady Sings the Blues and starring in Mahogany, which gave us the unforgettable Do You Know Where You're Going To? Even when her commercial success slowed down in the 80s and 90s, Diana never lost her star power. She kept performing and dropping albums, like The Force Behind the Power. The Grammys showed some serious love, giving her a Lifetime Achievement Award, and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall with the Supremes. Wild. Kinda begs the question, doesn't it? Did Diana have such a crazy career because she had a leg up? Or did she just know how to play the game better?
So you probably know she's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Supremes, but not as a solo artist. So her fans have now created a petition with nearly 1,300 signatures to try to get Miss Ross nominated as a solo artist in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
After Motown packed up and moved from Detroit to LA, Martha found herself in a tough spot. The label was starting to focus on newer, hotter acts like the Jackson 5. And it left Martha feeling sidelined. She had been with Motown for years, but the way they were treating her and her group pushed her to cut ties with them. Even after she left, the music of Martha Reeves and the Vandellas still held a massive place in Motown's legacy. But as time passed, Martha and her bandmates, Rosalind Ashford and Annette Beard, realized they weren't getting the royalties they were owed, especially after Motown moved to LA. They had helped create some of the label's biggest hits, but none of that success was reflected in their paychecks.
The money was being made, and
In your name.
and my name, and I wasn't handling it. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know how it was being spent.
In the late 80s, they had enough and took legal action against Motown for the unpaid royalties. It wasn't just about the money. It was about standing up to the label that had benefited so much from their music. The lawsuit brought attention to how Motown treated its artists, especially when it came to royalties, and the shady financial dealings that had been happening behind the scenes.
When I asked Berry where the money was going, he was insulted. He was appalled.
The battle dragged on, but by 1991, Motown finally settled. Berry Gordy, the founder, publicly apologized for the whole mess. While the details of the settlement were kept under wraps, it was a huge moment for Martha and the Vandellas. It was their overdue recognition for all their hard work that helped build the label. Martha's 1989 lawsuit against the label wasn't the only time an artist took them to court. In fact, a whole bunch of Motown's biggest names found themselves in the same boat, realizing they weren't getting paid the way they should have been for their contributions to the label's success. The whole thing started when artists started catching on that they were doing all the heavy lifting, while Motown was pocketing most of the profits. The label, known for turning artists The Temptations and Stevie Wonder into legends, was often shady about its financial dealings. Most of the artists were young and signed contracts without really knowing what they were getting into, and Motown had tight control over everything. As a result, they ended up making bank off the talent, while the talent barely saw any of it. Martha wasn't the only one who went after them. After her, the Supremes, well, mainly Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson, also realized they were missing out on royalties. Mary Wilson, in particular, didn't let it slide. She fought for years to get what she was owed, and even sued the label in the 90s. She did get a settlement, but it wasn't exactly the big payday everyone was hoping for. Despite being one of the most successful acts in Motown's lineup, they had issues too, mainly with royalties and who actually owned their music. They sued in 1973 over unpaid royalties, and that case was just another reminder that even the biggest acts weren't getting the fair share they deserved. Stevie Wonder, who had a generally good relationship with Motown, even went through his own legal battle in the early 70s. He didn't want to just be a Motown artist anymore. He wanted more control over his music and a better deal. So he renegotiated his contract, and his case became a key moment in artists standing up for themselves in the industry. But the big one? Marvin Gaye. He wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for his own artistic freedom.
Brother, there's far too many of you.
His iconic What's Going On album was a direct challenge to Motown's usual pop-driven formula. He wanted to create music that was more personal and meaningful, but the label didn't always support that vision. As much as he pushed back, his battle with Motown showed how much the label was still trying to control its artists, even when they'd already given so much. Martha, Mary, The Temptations, Stevie, Marvin. Each of these legal fights highlighted the same issue at Motown. Artists were getting exploited. The label was known for making stars, but it wasn't so great at making sure those stars got what they deserved in return. As Motown grew, so did the divide between the artists and the people running the show. It wasn't until the artists started speaking up and taking legal action that the truth about the label's shady business practices really came to light. Martha's lawsuit was more than just a legal battle. It was part of a bigger movement where artists started demanding their fair share. It made the music industry take a long, hard look at how things were being handled and set the stage for a new era where artists had more power and accountability. The fight for financial fairness was just beginning, and thanks to these legal battles, the next generation of artists wouldn't have to deal with the same shady deals.
In a book titled Dancing in the Street, Reeves has written an insider view of those early days and of the near disasters in her life when her journey as a Motown diva was over.
When Motown packed up and moved to LA, things weren't exactly smooth sailing for Martha. The whole change of scenery hit her hard, both in her personal life and career. The pressure of trying to stay on top in the music game, combined with everything else going on in her life, pushed her into a tough spot. Martha battled with drug addiction, and things got dark for a while.
I wanted to be in. When you do that, you're in. You get to meet prestigious people. You get called into places that you wouldn't normally get into if you're doing that.
But after hitting rock bottom, she turned it around, checked into rehab, and fought her way back. It was a major turning point, and slowly but surely, she got her life and her career back on track. It wasn't just addiction that messed with Martha's world. There was also a lot of drama within Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. The most notable shakeup came when Betty Kelly, an OG member of the group, was shown the door. Betty had been with the group since day one, helping build that signature Vandellas sound. But by the late 60s, things were off. She started missing shows, got into on-stage spats with Martha, and it all just became too much. So Betty was out, and in came Martha's sister, Lois Reeves. Lois brought a fresh energy to the group, and honestly, it was a good move. Keeping it in the family always helped keep things grounded. Even with the lineup change, the Vandellas still kept pushing through, dropping new hits. But it was clear the magic they had at their peak wasn't quite there anymore. Despite all the drama, Martha kept her head up and showed some serious resilience. She later opened up about her struggles, using her story to inspire others. And that's the scoop on Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. Super talented, ahead of their time. And honestly, they never got the recognition they deserved. But their music? Yeah, it's still living on, echoing through the years. Even if they didn't get the spotlight, their mark on music is undeniable. If you like this dive into Motown's unsung heroes, hit that like and subscribe for more hidden stories, behind-the-scenes drama, and all things music history. Drop a comment and let us know what you think about Martha and the Vandellas. Did they get overlooked? We'll catch you next time as we uncover more forgotten gems from the music world. Peace out.